Hi everyone, my name's Teresa Byrne. I'm from Field Art Projects and I'm a member of the Public Art Network UK, or PAN UK. PAN UK is an emerging network for contemporary visual arts curators, managers and producers working in the public realm in the UK, and we're delighted to be working with Art Projects on the Assembly programme. I'm a white woman with curly short hair. I'm wearing a grey shirt and black jumper and sitting in a room with wallpaper from the 1960s. I identify as she, her. I'm pleased to welcome you to our third Assembly event, Are Curators Still Relevant? Assembly is a series of 4 free online learning and development events for curators, producers and public art practitioners that explores issues and good practice in relation to the expanded field of public art. The programme invites you, the public art community, to explore the role public art can play in raising awareness and affecting change on issues around diversity, community cohesion, and the digital realm as a public space. The aim of the programme is to encourage collective knowledge sharing and peer-to-peer learning. And across the 4 events, we have put together a fantastic group of socially engaged curators, artists, and practitioners who will explore questions around who has agency, what is collaboration, what is the role of curators in socially engaged practice, and is the future of public art online? The speakers at each event have also been invited to contribute a case study, and we will be publishing the case studies as a downloadable resource on our website, and we'll also share them by email to everyone who has attended the event. So look out for those in a few weeks' time. If you haven't already done so, please do sign up for the last event in the series that will be taking place on the 17th of June. All details can be found on the Art Projects website. This programme has come about through a collaboration between Art Projects and the Public Art Network UK and is generously supported by the Art Fund and the Arts Council of England. We're really delighted that this partnership has come to fruition. Both organisations have identified that there are very little development opportunities for public art curators and practitioners, particularly those working in the field of socially engaged practice. So often we're thrown in at the deep end and expected to learn on the job, performing the many different roles required to develop and deliver this complex work with very little support or guidance. Creating opportunities for knowledge sharing and safe spaces to explore ideas around ethics and best practice, or simply to ask questions, seems vital as the sector moves forward through and out of COVID, in order to continue to positively contribute to the communities and public contexts that we operate in. Assembly sits alongside Constellations, Art Projects learning and development programme for artists who have an interest in socially engaged practice. Public Art Network UK is an emerging organisation set up to develop a sector specialist network that focuses on professional development, as well as external advocacy and connections to artists, commissioners and the public. Assembly is the first of our initiatives, and we're delighted to be shaping and facilitating this programme with Art Projects, a public art organisation that is committed to supporting artists to make new work that has social relevance, engages communities and encourages learning. So today's event explores the question, are curators still relevant? In a field where activism, community involvement and participation play an increasingly important role in the way projects are developed, do curators need to rethink their roles? If we consider the expanded field of public art, are curators equipped with the tools to do their jobs imaginatively and practically? How is the burgeoning growth of curating courses affecting the sector? To help us unpick all of this, I'm delighted to introduce Jess Fernie, our chair for today's discussion. Jess is an independent curator and writer with 25 years experience of working with galleries, architectural practices and public realm organisations on public programmes, commissioning schemes, exhibitions and residency projects across the UK and abroad. Jess is also a member of PAN UK and is interested in an expansive idea of contemporary artistic practice, which encompasses dialogue, research and engagement. She collaborates with artists on texts, conversations and projects, and often commissions experimental texts by writers for programmes. Jess will also be joined by 4 fantastic speakers: Laurie Peake, Director of Super Slow Way, Kira Blakey, Head of Exhibitions at Nottingham Contemporary, Bolanli Tajuddin, Independent Curator and Art Advisory, and Rachel Anderson, Caretaker with Idle Women. In a change to the advertised programme, Cedar Lewison will not be joining us today. So I'm delighted to hand over to Jess to introduce the event and the speakers in more detail. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Teresa. And hello, everyone. Thanks to you all for joining us. We've been pretty overwhelmed by the response to this series of talks, I have to say. It's been really heartening, and it shows that there's a kind of real need for a discussion around a lot of these topics, considering many different ways that we now work. And we did originally conceive this programme as a series of in-person events, which were going to be based in Bristol and London. But now that they're online, it seems so much more expansive, and there's so much more sort of possibilities for national and international conversations. So please feel free to say hello in the Q&A chat. It's nice to see where everyone's coming from. There's someone, I can see someone from Minneapolis, Missouri, Bath. It's really nice to see where everyone's joining us from today. I'm really happy to be chairing today's event, and I've been really looking forward to this discussion, which I think is so timely and very meaty on many different levels. We are really keen to get a broad range of views and responses about contemporary curatorial practice and experiences. And I'm pleased, as Teresa says, we've got speakers from across the UK who approach their work in very, very different ways. As you'll have seen when you came into the hall, there's a Slido poll which poses the question, which word or two words best describes your role? And if you haven't done so, it'd be great to see what your response is. It's really nice to see what people are saying. So I think curator, independent curator and project manager at the moment seem like they're sort of tussling for prominence. But where did I see? Firefighter, what I really liked. Civ, that was another one. That's great. I particularly feel like a Civ on many occasions. So before I get into a brief introduction of the issues, could I ask each of our speakers to say their name, where they're joining us from, and just to describe their appearance. I will start. My name is Jess Fernie. I am a middle-aged white woman with short grey hair, black glasses, and I'm in my garden shed in Colchester in Essex, and the sun is shining, miracle. Rachel, can I ask you to describe yourself?
Hello, I'm a white woman in my 40s. I also have short hair. I'm wearing a black t-shirt. I'm sitting in a room in a big industrial mill in Accrington, which is a small town in Lancashire, situated between the Pennines, the Peak District, the Yorkshire Dales. Yeah, not far from Manchester.
Perfect, thank you. Bolanle. You turn yourself off mute.
That would be great. My name is Bolanle Tajuddin. I am a black, dark-skinned woman. My pronouns are she, her. I currently have braids in, and I'm wearing a brown textured top. I am in London, and I'm really excited to be here.
Thanks so much, that's great. And Laurie.
Hi, I'm Laurie. I'm an old white woman in my 60s with grey shoulder-length hair and glasses. And my pronouns are she, her, and I am sitting in the dining room that has become my office with a plain white, very badly plastered wall behind me.
Thank you, Laurie. And lastly, Kira.
Hi everyone, my name's Kira Blakey. I'm talking to you from my dining room in London with my books behind me. I have long dark hair and I'm in my mid-30s and I'm wearing a blue shirt.
Thank you. Welcome to you all. So if we consider the ways that socially engaged practice and the field of public art has really expanded in recent years, and in that I'd say over you know the last 2-3 years even, it's just kind of exploded to include all sorts of different practice such as activism, social justice movements, community involvement, a much bigger emphasis on co-production, even rather than collaboration, sort of reducing, leveling out of the hierarchies involved in a lot of these projects. Process, engagement, participation, and then also the introduction of performance, experimental writing, and digital projects. And we're really here to consider whether we are equipped with the tools to do our job imaginatively and practically, given this extraordinary explosion. And we want to get a sense of how the role of curators, producers, and facilitators, firefighters, sieves, whatever we call ourselves, is changing, whether we need to rethink these roles. The education we receive, the way we talk about what we do, are we in fact fit for purpose, or the best people to do our jobs? And it is a genuine question that I personally have grappled with over recent years. And we're also really interested to find out from our speakers, and maybe from you later, how the development of artistic practice has influenced our approach to our work. And of course, we'd like to hear from you in general. So as I said, please feel free to drop us questions throughout the event in the Q&A chat on Slido, or you can raise your hand during the Q&A session if you'd like to talk to us direct. We've designed this programme of talks to be a peer-to-peer discussion, so please do give us your thoughts and responses and ideas. And just to let you know, I'll be bringing together the threads of each conversation in this series of assembly talks in a document after the last event next month, which will include input from audience members. So it'd be great to get your responses into that document in some way. After the presentations, we'll have a chat between us, so that will be around 1:45, and then we can open up for you all until 1:15, and then you can go get your lunch. So our first speaker is Rachel Anderson, who is an artist who creates contemporary public art projects outside of and in critical relation to the institution. In 2015, in partnership with Cis O'Boyle, she established Idle Women as a new artistic collaboration based in the northwest of England. Initiated as a one-off project to create and tour a narrowboat, the project has developed into a complex body of connected work made in collaboration with a really incredible broad range of women. It's now in its 6th year and has included the part demolition and reconstruction of a building in St Helens with tradeswomen passing on bricklaying, electronics and plumbing skills to local women, dismantling and reconstruction of a Land Rover Defender in mechanics workshops for women, and current projects include the transformation of a strip of Canaan in Lancashire to the UK's first into the UK's first medicinal herb garden for women. And just to give you a sense of the background, before Rachel did that, started that project, all of her practice is informed by her experience as a youth worker on the Queensbridge Estates in East London. She also established the education and outreach programme at South London Gallery and spent 8 years as a producer of collaborative projects at Art Angel. Now, I have to say that I wouldn't generally go into sort of, extended biogs for speakers that are in an event that I'm chairing, but specifically for this event, I think it's really important that everyone gets a sense of the kind of incredible depth and background knowledge and experience that each speaker has. So, bear with me, and it's all just really incredible stuff. So over to you, Rachel.
Hello, thank you. Thanks for having me. This is the first time I've done a talk to my computer screen, and it's very counterintuitive. So bear with me. I'm sure we all feel similar. So I think I want to just talk a little bit about the thinking behind the work that I've done for a long time, and particularly how it's applied with Idle Women. What I'm going to talk about is a sort of collection of articulation of practice that has been informed by lots and lots of collaborators over the years, and lots of experiences, and particularly is articulated at the moment through the work that Cis and I do together directly with Idle Women. So I'm going to sort of start by saying it's quite heavy. If you're feeling fragile today, you don't have to listen. Like, look after yourselves. It makes me feel fragile, but I also want to say that even though it's quite heavy, and serious, and perhaps some would even say negative, I actually think it comes from a position of absolute love and positivity and action for change. So we can't make those things without looking honestly at the problems that are around us and in our sector. So it is a collection of problems, I suppose. And I've kind of written it, so I wouldn't normally read, but I want to sort of get it, do well for you. So I'm going to sort of read from my notes, so apologise if it's a bit stiff. So I want to start by saying Sis and I left the London art scene after a culmination of problems and moments. I think we both felt that we could be in it and make change, like many of us do, feel that we can change from within. And there was some breaking points, and we said, you know what, we need to exit and do this differently on our own terms. I'm going to start by talking about context. So the first thing I think we have to name is that context is everything. The first context that we live in and try to work in and survive in is the white supremacist capitalist patriarchy. And this is a system that profits from division, self-loathing, hierarchy, violence and disaster. So this is the first context we're in and we're making work. Every aspect of our lives is affected by these power dynamics and values. Whether we resist them or not, they affect our past, present and future. They dictate the global systemic order. So anything we do to affect or disrupt that order is in itself seismic and at the same time hopelessly inadequate. How does this context play out on a global, national and local level? What are the particular struggles of our places? Whether it's death sentences for homosexuals in Uganda, the criminalisation of pregnancy in the USA, the weaponisation of rape in Ethiopia, or the Irish border. How do these affect the day-to-day lives of people trying to live? What does 10 years of austerity translate to in our towns, neighbourhoods, homes and bodies? How does it affect our behaviours, our health, our relationships, sense of self, capacity? How do we understand ourselves and each other in this context? Belonging. In the past 20 years, I've been employed under various definitions or trends: outreach, education, inclusion, community work, diversity. These definitions on their own are okay, maybe even helpful at times, but they are born from a system that doesn't want to deconstruct its own role in why they are needed and isn't prepared to change. So their application maintains the hierarchy established by the context. Sis and I, we talk about belonging. Everyone has an equal right to belong. We have a rightful place as we are on our own terms. Our experience is valid and is essential. And more than that, these things that we are made to feel less than and marginalized for are also our power. Our complex skills, our knowledge, our adaptability, our connections, and the languages that can't be learned by others. Creatively, we, and I mean we, are amazing. Our work is valid in its own terms, it's relevant, it's essential, it's current and transformative. We don't need institutional validation or plinths or stiff dinner parties, polished productions and obscene budgets in order to harness our creativity. We are needed. The institution. The institution, instated by and to uphold the context, is a coded hierarchical system. I learned at Artangel, which is a sort of famous public production company that sort of, well, is established for making work outside of the institution. Working there, I learned that outside of the institution is another institution, and beyond that institution, another institution, and so on. There are no sort of ends of the institution. When I left ArtAngel and the arts in a sort of formal way, I realised that I also carry the institution within me. Its values have shaped and moulded me. When I look for permission and validation, when I fail, when I expect help or justice or change and I am disappointed, when I expect better, when I want to dominate or win or dismiss or control, I summon the internalized institution. I'm going to share a description about coercive control. It's actually a women's sector piece of text about leaving violence, exiting violence. But actually, if we also apply it to the institution, I wonder how many of us recognise these conditions. So, coercive control undermines you in small, culminating ways which erode your self-confidence. Undermines your independence, not permitted to make decisions or take action on your own. Makes you believe you cannot survive without them. Holds all financial control and power, gives you an allowance which is just enough to keep you alive, but not enough for you to build something on your own. Maintains an authoritative judgmental voice. Makes you build up a level of insecurity so that you fear rejection, violence, or punishment. Makes you believe you will be nothing without them. You can't exist on your own. Withholds positive feedback or encouragement so that you try harder to earn it. Corrodes confidence to such an extent that you take responsibility for harms done against you and believe yourself at fault. You try harder. The disobedient are mad, bad, or dangerous. So instead of trying to fit in or change, we occupy the edges. And with outsiders, with other outsiders, we start with boundaries. We push them and work with the tension and the abundance of the freedom and the honesty of the unnoticed spaces and people and places. I hope I'm doing okay for time. I've no idea.
You've run over time, but you're so good. You can have the rest of the time on the planet.
I'm going to skip. I've actually got a little tiny, I've got one more section. I wanted to talk about attempting horizontally. This is my pyramid of power. This is the dominant education system for the last 20 years in the arts. Right at the bottom here is the community or the individual. Above it is the artist or the service provider. You can put whatever titles you want here. Here's the commissioner, here's the funder and the authority, and here's the government or the corporate control. These are the dynamics that we work with, and look how little say the individual has in this art commissioning model that we work with. I'm interested in putting it on the side. I'm happy for all of these people to have a voice, but there should be equal voices. Individuals should have as much say and value in a conversation about what we're creating together as anyone else. As collaborators, we work with Third Space. We want to share and co-create a value. We can't know what we're going to make until we begin. It's a process in which every moment and every detail matter. The smallest invisible detail can undermine the integrity of co-creation. These are two quotes that I want to say that I've always used. This one's by Rumi. Beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. The second is by Lilla Watson. If you've come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. Sis and I talk about hijacking resources. There are very little to no money for the things that we need in our communities. There's very little money for education. There's little money for food and nutrition, for social space, for youth work, but there is money for art. So how do we hijack the resources of the art world and redistribute it and make it useful and meaningful? Art is meant to be a public resource. Why then does it directly benefit and resource the wealthy? For art to be public, it should resource and benefit all people, and that will require a reconfiguration of the institution's terms of values, which can't be done to people, but must be done by us. We don't want superficial moments on streets, art made of overpriced sparklers. We want the depths and power of art, its longevity, its embedded presence in our lives, its resources and solutions, its transformation. Okay, I'm going to stop there.
I don't know if you can see us, Rachel, but we're all clapping. I'm sure the audience is too. That was incredibly powerful opening. Thank you. We can go straight to our next speaker now, Bolanle Tujadin, and she is an independent curator and educator who spent her career to date promoting artists from underrepresented groups, creating opportunities for alternative, more expansive narratives to be told. At university in 2015, she launched Black Blossoms, a platform designed to increase the visibility of Black women artists through a programme of exhibitions, talks and screenings. In 2020, she established Black Blossom School of Art and Culture to decolonise and disrupt the Eurocentric narrative predominant in the UK education system. And the amazing short courses are really worth checking out. They include Curating Black Art, A Taste of Black British Theatre, and Britain's Caribbean Artist Movements. Bolanle has recently worked as an independent curator with Kensington and Chelsea Art Week on a mural programme, on projects with Tate, and has devised and teaches Art in the Age of Black Girl Magic, a course that explores the historical and contemporary practices of Black women artists. Bolanle, welcome.
Thank you so much. Firstly, I'd just like to really applaud Rachel once again. Thank you for that opening statement. I actually feel quite tearful listening to that. So thank you so much for providing like a really strong context and the importance for talks like this. So I have never had a job in the art world, as some would like put it. I've never actually had a full-time or part-time permanent role in an institution. I've applied for roles, I have never got it. And last year during the pandemic, when Arts Council said that you could apply for the 2,500, I think many of us applied, artists and curators. I remember putting on the application form that the barriers in the art world means people who look like me have to always work from outside of the art world, which means that I am not secure in my position and I don't want to have to leave the art world in order to make money. I want to continue working within the arts. And listening to Rachel talk this morning, it strikes me that even with outside of the art world, I still feel gaslighted most of the time. I still don't feel always 100% supported on the projects that I bring to the table, although I see many institutions copying me to say, I don't want to be like, yeah, everyone's copying me, but I have seen this trend of let's promote and program more Black artists from Black and non-binary or Black women artists, and this wasn't the case when I first started my career. So there's definitely that trend, like from that there's a lot of stealing from grassroots movements. So I'm gonna answer, we were sent a set of questions, so I'm gonna like answer the questions because I feel quite nervous now after Laura. I feel a bit emotional as well. So I'm just gonna quickly look at my notes again. So, I'm going to talk about how I describe myself, whether I call myself a curator or a creative producer. I don't actually think it matters, but what I think is really interesting is that this term curator has historically been used by white men. And I was doing some research today, and what I came across was that from around 2013, this term curator has been called into kind of people are wondering, can everyone be a curator? Why is everything needs to be curated and blah, blah, blah. And what I think is really interesting is that at around 2013, I started my career in 2015, is that as soon as there's been more women, more Black people taking on the title of curator, it's like all of a sudden we don't want curators no more, or, you know, is what you're doing curation, you know, are you doing something else? And I think, although, like I said to Jess previously, curation is literally only 10% of the work, I think it's important to take ownership of that word and take it back from the powers that be that probably wouldn't want us to call ourselves curators. Even though we are working within the boundaries of other disciplines as well, it's important that I call myself a curator. And it's important that I call myself a curator because of the artists that I work with, because I want them to feel confident in calling themselves artists. And I want them to feel confident in the industry. And I want people who look like me, who are younger or who are even older, to also think, okay, if she's a curator, I can also curate too. And that is really important. And lastly, I want to pick up on how I like to work. I've always tried to work sideways. I don't really like to network up. And I say this all the time, like I think networking sideways with your peers and working collaboratively with your peers on projects are super, super important, maybe more so important than trying to snag a meeting with the head of tape.
Thank you, Bolanle. Yeah, and a lot of those issues we discussed in the previous event. If anyone's not attended those events, they're available on the UP Projects website. And there's lots of great input from the audience on that. So our next speaker is Laurie Peake. Laurie has an incredible track record of working on large-scale projects in public spaces with a huge range of artists and communities. She is currently the director of Super Slowway, a long-term project that brings local people together with artists to explore the Leeds and Liverpool Canal corridor in Pennine, Lancashire. And Laurie came to Super Slowway after working with Metabolic Studio in Los Angeles to deliver an ambitious project on the LA River, which just sounds really glamorous. I don't know if it was, but before that, she was director of projects and programs at Liverpool Biennial for 10 years, where she worked on temporary and permanent commissions, including the incredible Two Up, Two Down project with Jan van Heeswijk, the community land trust and bakery in Liverpool that is still around today. And in the 1980s, Laurie was on a small team that set up Take Liverpool. So an incredible mix of projects and career, and we're very lucky to have your voice in the mix here, especially because I imagine, Laurie, you've seen a hell of a lot of changes in the last 30 years. Over to you.
Yeah, I think it's 40 years actually. It feels like a very high mountain, you know, that you climb up and then you look back at the landscape, and it's changed immeasurably. I was going to kind of try and answer the questions you posed, but I think Rachel's thrown down the gauntlet. In, you know, looking at the much bigger issues that shape this conversation. And I suppose the easiest way, sorry, I don't know if you can see the images that I put up to go on screen. So, oh, there we are. This is an image. I've promised not to talk directly about projects, but this is an image from a project that we started, God knows when, in Liverpool with Jeanne van Heeswijk, who's a Dutch artist, and she would never take full credit for this work. All her work is done in collaboration with the communities that she works with. And this image is Fred Brown is on the right, the tall guy, who is one of the residents in Anfield that whose neighbourhood was being decimated by the housing market renewal initiative, and this was part of, I mean, it's still going on, so it's, you know, it's probably 12 years old now, the project, and it's come through several iterations. But I just chose this image because, you know, who is the object, who is the subject, who is the artist, who is the curator. And the Anfield Home Tour was basically a performative tour, written, developed and performed by the residents. And Fred, multiply deprived neighbourhood. Fred was just one of the very many residents we work with many complex issues, and sadly actually died a year or two after this picture. But he this was during the biennial, so the art world, you know, visitors came to take the tour, and it ended with Fred's amazing performance at the end of it, and swept everybody off their feet. So I don't care what I call myself, but I take a very old-fashioned view of the word curate, the meaning of the word curator, that just simply means to care for, and I care deeply for the people I work with, and from, you know, and it doesn't matter to me whether it's caring for the artist or caring for the people that the artist is working for, and particularly caring deeply for the finished artwork. So if there is that constant tightrope between the ethics and aesthetics, which we all take great care in balancing that, and giving equal weight to those two things. Fast forward to 2016, when I came to East Lancashire, where I was born and bred, and as part of to run one of the Arts Council's Creative People and Places programmes. And our programme spans 4 local authorities from Pendle to Blackburn, and they are all in the kind of top 10 of the multiple deprivation indices, and all the attendant health problems and social problems that come as symptoms of that poverty. And so our programme was a £2 million programme, and I was very conscious that there was, you know, we had to use that money very, very wisely. It had to work. It had to be able to be transformative. It had to be able to have meaning in people's lives, bring people together who wouldn't normally be brought together, to find a collective voice, to actually make a noise and make a difference. And there are several projects I think that we've done that with, including Shapes of Water, Sounds of Hope, which we did with Suzanne Lacey, that was in the last slide, that brought, you know, our very diverse but very complex community together, that have, you know, I suppose marginalised, multiple sort of marginalisations, including this group that grew and grew and grew with Jamie Holman's project Live the Dream, that reappropriated the spaces where the grandparents and great grandparents of the people who live here now worked in the mills and the warehouses, and in the 80s they took over and reappropriated those spaces for the scenes of raids, to be producers and creators within those spaces, that would give them joy and agency. I think I need to stop there. Sorry, I know I've gone over, but I think just in terms of the questions that I haven't directly answered, but one of them is, do you feel equipped to do your job? And yeah, I feel entirely equipped, because you just you stick to your values and your principles, and that's for me all the equipment you need. I think my career trajectory, I had a very traditional art history education at the Courtauld Institute, and went straight into a job at the Tate in the mid 80s, when there only was one Tate at Millbank. And the curator's job then was largely to be invisible. That the exhibitions curated were things of consumption, to be consumed by a certain public. Then when we set up Tate Liverpool, I was the one to do the outreach with the Toxteth community, who had rioted in 1981 and had catalysed Michael Heseltine into developing the Mersey Development Fund, and that that enabled Tate to move up to the Albert Dock and regenerate the dock and the warehouse, and the Toxteth community it rightly felt that it added insult to injury, that the money that they brought by virtue of their action was being spent on a gallery that obviously whose collection was built and acquired by a man who had made his money on the back of sugar and slavery. And I think it was at that point that I realised that the work had to be out in the world, and that the world had to challenge that institution. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laurie. Let me introduce our next speaker, Ciara Blakey. Ciara has recently moved from her role as curator for the Art on the Underground programme in London to become head of exhibitions at Nottingham Contemporary. In her 5 years at Art on the Underground, she has worked on a huge range of public commissions with very many different publics, community groups, contexts and artists, including Assemble and Matthew Raw on a coffee outlet at Seven Sisters that included traineeships for local people, Larry Achiapong on a series of new roundels for Westminster Tube Station, and more recently with Linda on a performance work and a set of hoardings at Southwark Station. The list is very long and no doubt involved her wearing multiple hats and talking to multiple different people in many different languages and constituencies. And before Ciara worked at Art on the Underground, she was Research and Public Programmes Curator at London School of Economics. And she also developed her own freelance projects, which have included ones with Elizabeth Wilde at Focal Point Gallery in Southend and Karen Cunningham at the Showroom in London. Over to you, Ciara.
Hi, everyone. It's thanks to all the speakers. It's great to hear people speaking honestly. I'm going to try and talk succinctly because I think there's probably a lot of crossover. I'm going to talk a bit more practically, maybe. So I worked as a curator or an organizer across public programs, exhibitions, and the public realm, which is where I have my most extensive experience. And I really struggled with what direction to take in my place in the art world. And I didn't get a permanent job or a full-time job until I was in my early 30s. I really struggled. I applied many times, like we've heard before. I'm currently head of exhibitions doing a maternity cover at Nottingham Contemporary, and I previously worked for 6 years at Art in the Underground, as Jess said. And I'm going to come on to why this transition to a new job in the middle of the pandemic is relevant shortly. So in terms of my experience as a curator, I'm specifically interested in commissioning artists to support the production of new work. And I'm interested in working in a way that's site-specific and bears meaning to its location and audience. So I've had great pleasure recently working on exhibitions at Nottingham Contemporary, and not least because artists help us see the world, which is really, really important to me. Artists, artists, artists. So it leads me to Jess's provocation, are curators still relevant? Absolutely, I think yes. I don't necessarily think or care so much about the title. I think it's perhaps skewed, but I think the work that we do is important. And I wanted to reflect on something I read recently that Rosalie Goldberg, the performance scholar and curator of performance art, said about curators and the practice being akin to writing. So she said something along the lines of a curator being a mouthpiece, a kind of translator of sorts, a conduit for artists' ideas. And she talked about the huge sense of responsibility to serving the artist and their work. The curator must know the history of each artist, the larger history to provide context. And she thinks about curating as writing as being very close, so the similarities in the research that's involved and the thinking that goes into writing and editing, and thinking around what material makes the cut. So you have to turn that information into something accessible, I suppose, into a story that enthralls. And I also wanted to say something about, you get really close to artists. They often tell you things that they might not want to say out loud in public. So I think of it as a kind of detective work where you're kind of unraveling all kinds of stories and then piecing those bits back together so that artists' ideas are front and center. Of course, a curator means different things to different people. So I'm purely speaking from my own experience and interests, which is someone without a curating degree and a pretty crap degree in fine art painting. I didn't necessarily set out to be a curator, but really to work with artists. And I wanted to refer as well to something someone said to me recently. I don't think they're a very good curator. And it made me think, what is a curator? And it kind of really pissed me off, really. My experience is incredibly broad. It's incredibly labor intensive. I manage budgets, legal contracts, incessant funding applications, stakeholders, communities. I write, I manage press, registrar duties. The kind of list is pretty exhaustive, and had to learn it all on the job. It's pretty minimal time spent researching, and I've thought a lot recently about my own anxieties around whether that means I'm not a proper curator. And I think a lot about when people say things about how that works below them, or they won't do this and that, because that's not what curators do. There's a lot of labour in putting together commissions in the public realm, and it's exhausting. And if I'm really honest, it's why I left Art in the Underground. I wanted to go somewhere where I felt like we were all working from the same position with the same goal, perhaps more for me. But I was tired. I was really tired of fighting to make things happen and to get people on side. I'm not criticising Art in the Underground at all. It was incredible in many ways. It's really one of the last great bastions of public service, Transport for London. It's incredibly well unionised. It's probably the most diverse place I'll ever work. And it forced me out of my art bubble for sure. There were budgets. We could work slowly. We could pay artists properly, which feels really quite pertinent following the pandemic. But there wasn't any urgency because there was no competition. It had its own priorities, its own funding, its own sites. And while the incessant round of funding bids and accountability is exhausting, perhaps it creates drive and ambition, perhaps a bit controversial. Do I feel equipped? I do, but I have learned how to ask for help and how to stand up for myself. And it's taken me a long time to gain that confidence. There's things I do that I don't feel confident about. I'm currently in a senior position at a museum, and I don't feel equipped to deal with the anti-racist pledge work we're doing, for example, although I do feel supported in seeking out that support. I wanted to end this platform by putting artists front and centre. Why aren't we paying people more? Why are we spending so much money on shipping, for example? I wanted to talk about access and inclusion. I've been reading a really incredible book by Georgia Segre, who's an artist and activist, about protesting the financial system we all operate under and kind of resisting consuming in public. So she talks about the queues outside of our shops when the current pandemic started to lift, and our need to fill ourselves to avoid our pain. And if we can stop consuming in public space, can we start listening to one another and create inclusive spaces? But she said, to take care of the space is to resist choosing those who know more than others, between those who are already included and those who want to belong, to build respect for the space, not because it's yours, because it's everyone's. And this could create the momentum that would enable skills and interests to emerge, and pleasure and joy to appear. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kira, and thanks so much to all of our speakers. I think I speak for everyone in the audience in the Q&A that it's actually taken me, a bit by surprise, as Bolanle said. It's pretty emotional, and I think there are many times where we just kind of, we just chug along and do our jobs, but there are moments where we kind of rise above and consider these issues, and actually, it can be quite painful. And I really want to thank all of you for just being so incredibly honest. It's really, really useful, especially at this moment. So for the audience, you will see that there's a question in the poll, which we have posed, which is, what's our question? Which word or words best describes your role? Oh no, sorry, this is the next question. Do you feel equipped to do your job? Which some of the speakers have addressed. I know it's a bit of a yes, no answer, but if you'd like to expand on that in the Slido bar, please do. That would be great. Now, I know we've got lots of questions from the audience, but yeah, let me just kick off with a few and just a kind of a sense of what the speakers have kind of raised so far. There's this, what Rachel said about the importance of context is just, I think, incredibly key, and something that we so often just don't really consider. Honesty, ethics, it's an absolutely fraught minefield. So much of the situations that we enter in local community groups is something that we really need to consider. But and Bolanle, your point about terms, using the terms curator, I think is so useful at this moment, to just be reminded that the minute we start critiquing these terms is also the minute that other groups of people are kind of becoming into the frame and becoming part of the conversation, and that has to be discussed. So thank you so much for raising that. And something that I wanted to ask you, Bolanle, you or Rachel, is how we grapple with the fact that so much of what we do is unsustainable. I've really understood I haven't done a huge number of socially engaged projects, but so many of them are set really unrealistic expectations from outside agencies, from institutions and partners, and from ourselves about what we should be achieving, which results often in burnout and exhaustion. And we worry about letting other people down constantly. So does any of this kind of ring true with you, Bolanle, and the work that you've been doing, the sort of emotional sort of overload, and maybe the physical one as well?
I think definitely pre-pandemic. However, I think I started the Black Blossom School of Art and Culture last year as a way to make sure that the work that I was doing could be sustained outside of institutional or any kind of government funding. I think there are many examples of like different movements with people of colour, and they're given money and then it gets taken away, and then they can't keep on going with their projects. So the school for me is a way to make sure that I get paid and the tutors get paid, and then I'm able to work with artists in a way that is even if someone asks me to do a project, I don't have to think, oh, I can't do this project because it's not enough money, because I've already created an income for myself outside of an institution. So I did, when Rachel spoke about institutions earlier, I did think, oh, okay, the Black Blossom School of Art and Culture is its own institution, but it's an institution that started from me as a Black woman. So therefore it's decolonized right from the very beginning. I don't have to battle with structures of white supremacy. And yeah, so I think a lot of the emotional labor comes more with admin, if I'm honest. Like, that is the emotional labor of my work, like people emailing me, sending me loads of DMs and stuff like that. So, you know, when Laurie earlier spoke about the role of a curator back in the day was to be quite absent, for me, my role as a curator now is to be quite visible. Like, I often find that I have to be very, very visible. And I think that's because of the emergence of social media and how that impacts how, you know, the work is seen and what people are going to, and like, sort of like, not only am I curating art, it's like curating culture as well. So it's far more, it's more labor intensive that way, because I'm trying to curate something that hasn't necessarily been done. Well, it has been done, because I don't want to forget like all the great work that has been done, but it always gets forgotten. And for me, it's about creating something that isn't forgotten and that is embedded within the arts.
Perfect, that's a wonderful response. Thank you, Bolanle. I'm now really conscious of time and also really frustrated because there is so much to discuss, and I think this is really, we shouldn't be, you know, looking to answer any of these questions. We should really just be raising them as a sort of a point of departure. So I am going to jump straight to the Q&A now. Now, if you've asked any questions in the chat, please do go on to the Q&A section, because that's where we can sort of sift them more realistically. So there's one that we have to Bolanle and Rachel, who are, what are your strategies for projects created with a horizontal structure? How do you make decisions and share workload? Rachel, I'm wondering if I can go to you for that one.
I think this is kind of like often a bit misunderstood when I say this. I think that the main way I would describe it is that we have to all sit around a table together and equally have a role. That doesn't mean that no one takes a lead, but it might mean that leadership moves or changes, and there are different times and place for different expertise to come forwards. So it's a kind of fluidity, I suppose, of practice, but absolutely, for me, it's about saying, well, if we all sit around a table together, we will create something that is bigger than the sum of our parts. And we don't know what that is, because none of us can imagine it on our own. We can only get there by a process together. That's it.
And that came out so much in the last talk with Samra Mayenja and Kerry Campbell. If anyone hasn't watched those, there were just so many lovely instances of kind of collaboration and listening and sort of co-creation, which was really heartening to hear.
Sorry, I just thought I also have to say that you can't do that without an analysis of power. So you can't do that without an analysis of inequality and actually how voices are heard in a space. So I don't ever mean literally sitting around a table, because definitely that's not a place of equality. You know, voices have to be heard in different ways, and processes have to be versatile and relevant. Yeah, sorry.
Thanks, Rachel. Okay, I'm looking at the other questions now. From a curator's perspective, what does an institutional arts education add or not add, exclamation mark, to a socially engaged artist practice? I think this is quite useful, because I was looking at all of your backgrounds and they're all so different. You've all come from very, I mean, not extremely different, but, you know, none of you have, I don't think any of you have a curating course degree, do you? No, and I don't either. So we are free from the curating course discourse. But I think it's quite interesting to consider what an arts education, or what kind of education we have, and how we feel that's equipped us to do our job in socially engaged practice. And maybe if there's anyone listening who's just thinking about sort of becoming involved in this field, what would you suggest that they do in terms of their education? So Kira, can I go for you for that one?
Sure. So the question is around advice.
Advice. But the question was, from a curator's perspective, what does an institutional arts education add to socially engaged artists, to socially engaged practice?
I mean, how to answer that? I'm not really interested in having a curating MA or people that follow a specific path. I think for me, I'm much more interested in people that have a kind of authentic sense of self. So whether that means you have a degree in history or you've worked in social care, I think as long as there's some honesty in how you're approaching things, then you're always going to achieve something that's real and touches people. Yeah.
That's wonderful. An authentic sense of self. That's definitely worth re-quoting. Okay, here's another question from Aidan Mosby. How can we make curating more accessible and inclusive with respect to including disabled curators, and therefore hopefully increasing voices of the work we see? Laurie, is there anything you wanted to say or you could say about that? No worries if you don't, you could pick that up. Have you worked with artists who are disabled artists or disabled curators in the past, and maybe how to amplify their voices within this strange context?
Well, yes, I have, but for me, it's trying to give equal weight to all voices in a project, and the artist and the curator certainly, do not need to be, nor should they be, in my opinion, the loudest voice. So it's also about expanding and supporting access of everyone involved in the creation and the delivery of a project. And it just really, going back to what Rachel said, that the space that you create that gives people equal voice.
And was there anything any of the other panelists wanted to respond to?
Yeah, I'd like to add, sometimes I actually don't feel like all voices need to be equal. So on the Black Blossoms team, we have people with like varying access needs, and they have different gender identities as well. And I think I understand my position. Sometimes I'm a cis Black woman, so I have privileges, and obviously some, not all privileges, but within the team, I definitely have a privilege, and I do like to platform the voices who I know that don't necessarily get platformed higher than mine. And I do that by opening my networks to them and giving them an opportunity that they might not get on working with, say, white curators in an institution to expand their understanding of the art world. So yeah, I think sometimes equality is about all being equal, but I don't like to think about equality from that point of view. I like to think about it from a view that, okay, who has the privilege and who doesn't, and what can we do to make that person more equal in a different scenario if they weren't within this team. So that's from my point of view anyway.
That's really useful. Thank you, Bolanle. Rachel, did you want to say anything?
I just wanted to say, in direct response to the question about sort of disabled curators and opportunity, there are some really brilliant networks and projects and organisations and collaborations that are fighting really hard for survival and to do this work. And I think one of the ways we can do is to support them and work with them as well, and recognise that the work's being done and enhance it if we can.
Yeah, and if there's, we could maybe put some links on the chat that would be really useful. I think we'll be able to offer that in some way. Okay, so I'm looking at the other questions. We've got a few minutes left. What do the panelists think of the growth in numbers of artists who are also curators? Let me have a look at another question. Is the curatorial role now emphatically facilitative across roles and about giving advice? Kira, maybe you can address this one. Do you feel like a facilitator? You know,
yeah, I mean, I think brilliant if artists are working as curators. I don't think that we even need to sort of make that distinction. I think everybody has a stake, and we've been thinking about it a lot in our institution. You know, the kind of quite historical way you might say curated by infuriates me, because so many people are involved in putting an exhibition together, and there's so much incredible labor involved. So yeah, no, I think it's a great thing.
And we have to wrap up really soon, but just a sort of question that I'd really like to pose is, what has changed in the last year over this sort of incredibly strange, sort of isolated period? Can I just ask you if your view of your role, your sense of urgency, your sense of commitment, your sense of self in the world, you know, whether the last year has changed anything and how you see things changing in the future? Laurie, can I ask you first?
Well, yeah, for my experience is that it's all got so much more intense. So the kind of the workload seems to have accelerated because we don't have any gaps between meetings, etc. And certainly in our experience, because there's all this sort of government knee-jerk reaction funding that has to be applied for in a matter of weeks for a lot of money that also has to be spent in a matter of months, that's been a very peculiar added intensity and pressure, because obviously the need has gone so much greater out there. I mean, our area here, Blackburn, Burnley, etc., you know, we've been on near permanent lockdown through this year. I mean, but you know, what we've had is really great experiences with keeping in touch with all our groups on various platforms, mainly Zoom and WhatsApp, and we were incredibly aware that of digital exclusion, and we've made great strides actually in being able to bring people along in the digital realm, you know, who had never been in it before. So yeah, I mean, but you know, we launched a live project in real life yesterday, and I've got to say that feels fantastic.
I think that's such a nice note to end on. It was so lovely talking to Laurie yesterday. She was like, I have to go up and do a launch, and it was like a real life launch with real life people. So that just felt incredibly positive after this year of strangeness. We have to wrap up now. I've been sent lots of urgent messages. Thank you so much to all of you for your incredible, I mean, I have to say, just really humbling, thought-provoking responses, and also to our audience. And obviously we can't hope to answer all these questions, but I feel like we have kind of kick-started a really important process, sort of just at least pooling our thoughts and recognizing what we're all doing, and at least identifying some of the issues that we're grappling with. And obviously it's clear that there's no blueprint for this job, and there's a huge amount of just very problematic issues associated with it. And it feels like we're all absolutely relevant. We just have many different ways of delivering and thinking about that relevance. And that maybe what we need is a more kind of structured support system, an acknowledgement of the complexities of these projects, and for that to be recognised within an art structure or a funding system. So thank you all so much to the speakers. It's been a real joy to have this discussion with you. And I'm going to hand over finally to Teresa. Thank you.
So thank you so much to Jess, Laurie, Kira, Bolanle and Rachel for this really important conversation, and thank you so much to the audience for participating. You'll see in the Slido bar a questionnaire which we would be really grateful if you could complete before you leave. We hope to see you at the last of our assembly events, Is the Future of Public Art Online? After a year of interacting with the world through our screens, is this the point at which public art becomes something that is primarily experienced through the digital world rather than in the physical world? The event will be chaired by Siddharth Khajuria, senior producer at the Barbican. Do look out for the case studies from all of our speakers and for a recording of today's event on the Up Project's YouTube channel. Do sign up to the mailing lists for more information about Assembly, Up Projects and the future plans of the Public Art Network. And finally, another huge thank you to our amazing speakers, to the Art Fund and the Arts Council of England for supporting the programme, to Up Projects for collaborating with us, particularly to Jess Fernie from Public Art Network and Emma Underhill and Elizabeth Delpret from Up Projects. And lastly, I want to thank the fantastic technical team at Up Projects who've worked really hard to make the event possible today. Look forward to seeing you at the next event. Thank you.